Hello everyone, I'm Marcus Bedesi and welcome to my board review meeting for reviewing my progress as the supply chain manager. I provided a little outline of the presentation I've made for today, so here's our agenda or outline. And we're going to cover a little overview and then get more into my progress personally, as well as the risks, opportunities, my turning point, and then we will conclude with my final thoughts and the next steps. So first, an overview of the project. I played an essential role of the simulation shown here in the overview of what I'm in charge of. I'm the supply chain manager for Model A and Model B. Model A is our base model phone, and Model B is our premium version, being slightly more expensive, but with the same overall features. I've been the supply chain manager for 4 years, 2 times now, and I'm in charge of forecasting and demand as well as production planning. I also choose the product features added each year based on the team's forecasted demand. Most of my forecasting is based on the average of the forecasting teams, but I also take into account the standard deviation and variability in sales forecasted by the team members. Some of the factors that I look into consideration when trying to optimize my supply chain strategy were things like the industry we're operating in, as well as the goals of the business, the value proposition as seen by the customer, and the decision-making steps and progress that had to be made for the process that I was going through when making a certain decision. Some of the strategies I implemented are listed below. They include inventory buffering, nearshoring, diversifying suppliers, as well as heavy investment into demand forecasting, such as with the Celldex conference. Very useful, insightful expectations can be gathered, and a much clearer understanding of demand can be found from such a small investment like the Celldex conference. After the first round of the simulation, I noticed how erratic the demand can be in certain years due to unforeseen and external factors. Inventory buffers are also a great way of saying safety stock and can be used to prevent delays and mitigate surges in demand. I had those safety stock inventories produced at the supplier pretty close and the supplier very close. That way, if any additional demand was needed, or if the demand did not meet expectations, I wouldn't have to wait 4 months for the lead time. Another strategy that was implemented was diversifying my manufacturing network. Instead of having 1 or 2 suppliers or picking purely on a cost basis, I aimed at having the farthest and cheapest supplier, which was far away, produce the bulk of the inventory, and then pretty close and very close produced roughly half of each what was left over. This is because by diversifying, I can create more flexibility in order to better adapt to changing demand, and having multiple suppliers is also great for resilience. So this strategy incorporated multi-sourcing, manufacturer network diversification, as well as nearshoring. Some other strategies that I included were customer centricity. So that's when you focus on customer preferences and needs and you put them first. I aim to put product options into Model A and Model B based on my perception as well as the forecasting team's perception, but also how the consumer would enjoy the product with the features. So, in the 2 4-year runs I made with the company, I averaged around $154 million in profit and earned a total of 22 board votes in the 8 years. In my first run, you can see clear improvement from starting at 1 star and earning 5 stars in my final year. In the second run, done a little over a week later, I didn't do as well managing to keep inventory very low in order to reduce the costs of carrying and inventory and liquidation costs. This could have been through poor forecasting on the team's part, or maybe it was inflexibility in the supply chain due to my choice in suppliers. I'm not really sure anymore. So there were many risks in the simulation that needed to be accounted for. The first risk is inaccurate forecasting. Inaccurate forecasts can be costly to a company in terms of underproduction and overproduction, which I'll get into shortly. Bad forecasting is also a sign of bad data, which is costly to fix. Forecasting is essentially a tool that can be used to predict future trends in a business. It's specifically used here to predict how sales project over the course of a year. Demand being roughly the same for all months as seen in the simulation. The technique used for this forecasting in the simulation was qualitative, where analyzed trends are used by the Delphi model. So this model works where a panel of experts or professionals are asked about various opinions regarding the topic that they're knowledgeable about. So this, in this case, would be the forecasting team is very knowledgeable about the cell phone space. So forecasting is also done in this simulation through market analysis. So that is the Celldex conference, in which the latter half of the forecast uses the information gathered from the conference. These methods are great tools but are not always accurate, and it's impossible to make accurate predictions since the consumers are not reliable and the many other external factors that affect the demand. The present forecasting risks can be partially mitigated by the usage of quantitative forecasting in conjunction with the current methods. Quantitative forecasting, such as trend analysis, uses past data, such as sales, to predict the sales in the current and upcoming years. This can be weighted since the most recent data is always more relevant also. Quantitative models and forecasting can be much cheaper than paying a team of salaries, in which they can still be wrong, as seen in the simulation that happened to me. So another risk that was evident was overproducing and underproducing. The company forecasts and make predictions about how many phones to sell in the year. However, the predictions weren't always right. This is where overproducing and underproducing come into play. So in the 4 years of production, the company overproduced and underproduced both Model A and B. This was due to inaccuracy predicting the trend of consumption. Overproducing and underproducing both cause a loss of profit and hinders the company and the business. Underproducing cost the company revenue since sales could have been made that were not made and thus costing profit. Overproducing costs us money through carrying costs as well as the liquidation of leftover products at a loss. Thus, keeping risk at bay is essential. Overproduction can also lead into a financial risk if too much money is invested into a model without enough returns. The balance between overproduction and underproduction at the equilibrium point is hard to find and well as to maintain. This risk is best accepted rather than mitigated, and the best way to overcome overproduction and underproduction is to improve on your forecasting methods, which I said in point 1. So the final risk I'll be addressing is possible inventory shortages. So that's very likely in the current pandemic, and even after this pandemic is already over, as we have a large global supply chain and chip shortage all over the world. So we have external factors affecting the supply of companies' chips. So this risk hinders the company, and other companies as well as other industries and supply chains take a hit because the demand is high and the chips are very low. So chips are essential to producing the phones. It's basically impossible to mitigate this, and other large external factors similar to this, they're also extremely difficult to deal with. Possible ways to mitigate this are very costly, such as figuring out how to produce and manufacture the chips internally to your company rather than buying it. This could cost billions of dollars in research and development, as well as retooling and space needed for the operation. You could also mitigate this partially by having multiple suppliers, but that's not guaranteed, as we've seen throughout this pandemic. Even though there were risks present, there were also many opportunities the company could use to profit. The first opportunity is that choice of more product options. Throughout the simulation, there were only 4 options available each year, and these ranged from style of the phone to durability to GPS, as well as improved battery life. Increasing the variety of these options is essential for the business to thrive. So instead of having just 4 options and changing 2 of them out every year, the company can continue to add to the list available and increase their catalog of possibilities. Having more choices can increase the demand for these products, since you can attract more consumers if that choice is made. So the company could also become more lean, since you're reusing and implementing the same options as the previous model. And this could save money if you do it in a certain lean fashion. So similar to what Apple does with the iPhone SE, Apple uses the same body as the iPhone 8 and with newer internals, and is able to keep costs down by using the same manufacturing processes from several years ago. The second opportunity is to make a mid-tier cellular phone in between Model A and B. So instead of having just 2 different phones with 2 kinds of specifications, you have a mid-tier that would drive value up to more Model B. So consumers need more options, and phones don't come in a one-size-fits-all. Apple creates like 5 or 6 phones right now, so why can't we? Having another model would be profitable, and many phone companies produce different sizes and different specs at different price points in order to attract maximum number of buyers. So Apple has the iPhone SE, as I mentioned, as a base model, but they also offer the iPhone 13, the 13 mini, the 13 Pro, the 13 Pro Max, as well as last year's iPhone 12, the 12 mini, as well as the year before that's iPhone 11, Samsung also does this with a variety of their phones at different price points and different ages available to maximize potential consumers. So this might cannibalize your sales a little for a Model A or Model B, but it's still better to make the sale rather than having the customer buy from the competition. A mid-tier smartphone in this market could be very successful, especially seeing Model A, which is the base, sells more than double of what Model B sells every year. The final opportunity this company can employ is to offer different options for A and B respectively. So as mentioned prior, both models offered similar specifications, build quality, and options. The difference in pricing was due to Model A being marketed as a base model, with Model B more in premium. So the company could benefit from different specs in each model. For example, Apple creates the regular iPhones and the iPhone Pros, which offer different aspects and are tailored to a specific consumer. So Model A can be compared to the iPhone 13 or even the iPhone SE, while Model B is more comparable to the 13 Pro and the 13 Pro Max. They offer a higher refresh rate screen, a larger screen, options like extra cameras or more storage space, and they're tailored to a more full and premium experience. The ability to have Model A and Model B grow separately and with different options allows the company to take advantage of more consumer groups. Another possible option they could implement is different storage capacities so that customers that need additional storage can take advantage of this, while customers who just need the base model can continue to exist in their lower cost space. Finally, there was a potential turning point I noticed that was while I was conducting the simulation. So that was the board meetings for me, and they initiated feedback and improvement for the following year of production. So they were held annually where a group of highly qualified members would come together to discuss. This allowed me to tailor production, forecasting, and other aspects to improve the company's profit. They also influenced the choices I would take in the next year. So each of the board members had different things in mind of what a good supply chain manager should do to be successful. They pointed out different aspects of the supply chain and whether they thought I did a good job at each aspect or not. The meetings were critical to my final position because it gave me insight on how to make the company better. So Clara would give feedback on if I'm basing my average forecasting data on the consensus or if based on another of the average forecasts. And each of them would basically give me something different to look at, and they would judge me on different qualities. So this turning point was key for me, as each of the board members paid attention to different things and showed me a good balance of what to do with each of them. And if I didn't meet their criteria, I would not get their vote. So based on their feedback, I would try to incorporate changes to my strategy in order to win their vote. The feedback they gave was heavily influential and changed my thought process and processes for forecasting demand as well as production planning. So, some of the next steps the company should take in order to continually grow and improve are listed here. With these improvements and next steps, the supply chain manager will be able to make better informed decisions as well as make the company more money. The company should incorporate quantitative forecasting to work along with their qualitative methods already used. They should become more resilient in order to deal with shortages like the chip shortage ongoing, and they should increase the variety and specificity in order to attract new customers in different price ranges. They should also create a third phone at a mid-tier price point in order to further push their value proposition. In conclusion, I made improvements over the 4 years in the first run, as well as increases in profitability in the second run. I found out the risks and opportunities and made recommendations on how to pursue them as the company grows into their next steps. I implemented features onto Model A and Model B in order to grow the company, and the board meetings helped me make decisions in the following years.